For the past few years, the global supply chain has fallen into a crisis that never seems to end. The industry has become extremely vulnerable to global events. Consumers have been dealing with shortages and delivery delays, and uncertainty has become the new normal. Since the beginning of 2020, strains in global production networks reflected the imbalances between the supply and demand of a wide range of goods and created several headwinds for the global economic recovery. From that point on, the world has started to suffer from soaring inflation, raw material shortages, rising commodity prices, and a massive spike in shipping and freight costs. With every link of the supply chain impacting businesses, both large and small, trying to evolve a globally disrupted supply chain has been a recipe for disaster. While consumers have started to panic buy and hoard products once they realized empty shelves were becoming a common thing, companies have started to overorder and stockpile goods in anticipation of further supply chain bottlenecks. However, that has created even more shortages and pushed the price of virtually everything to historic highs. Simultaneously, the cost of sending containers from China to the US has reached astonishing levels over the past 24 months. For some trade routes, the price of standard 40-foot containers faced a 400 to 600% increase last year. In December 2021, The Economist estimated that the spot price of sending such a box from Shanghai to New York skyrocketed from $2,500 in 2019 to $15,000. On top of that, the latest port closures have recently resulted in a significant slowdown in global manufacturing. They also exposed the weaknesses of an interdependent global trade system that has become way too entangled to be able to run smoothly. Problems continue to pile up on top of each other, and industry executives are warning that we haven't seen the worst of this crisis just yet. For that reason, today we have compiled some alarming numbers that expose the true extent of the global supply chain crisis. But before checking this list, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to your channel to keep updated with our future videos. Without further ado, here are 30 facts that prove the global supply chain crisis is far from over. 1. According to a survey conducted by Chain Store Age, more than 6 in 10 Americans, or about 66% of U.S. consumers, are concerned that supply chain issues will never end. On top of that, ever since the system has been disrupted in the first half of 2020, 83% of U.S. consumers reported empty shelves at their local stores. 2. Delivery delays have severely impacted American consumers over the past 2 years. For that reason, roughly 82% of shoppers have concerns that the supply chain crisis will ruin life plans such as birthdays, vacations, holidays, and the purchasing of necessary items. A study conducted by Material Handling and Logistics has shown. 3. In 2021, about 60% of U.S. consumers were unable to get a product due to shortages, according to a Gallup poll. In 2019, supply chain bottlenecks could make shortages last for an average of 3 to 4 weeks. In December 2021, that average jumped to 236 days. 4. Supply chain shortages actually have a major impact on consumer sentiment. Chain Store Age data reveals that U.S. buyers have a negative emotional response to product shortfalls, with 61% feeling frustrated, 46% impatient, 45% anxious, and 34% angry. 5. That's probably the reason why in a separate survey conducted by Ad Age, 58% of consumers said they would stop buying a brand entirely after 1 to 3 supply chain delays and disruptions. 6. Millions of companies have also been struggling to navigate through shortages and shipping delays. Accenture data exposed that last year, A staggering 75% of U.S. companies felt negative or strongly negative impacts on their business due to supply chain issues. 7. From the third quarter of 2020 to the third quarter of 2021, companies listed in the Fortune 500 reported a surge of 412% in supply chain bottlenecks, according to Reuters. 8. Shipping problems, including a shortage of containers, a global crew change crisis, the blockage of the Suez Canal, West Coast port congestion, China's government-mandated port shutdowns, and a shortage of labor have helped to push shipping prices up by 600% over the past 2 years. The at-age analysis shows that these higher costs prevented companies from investing more money in other necessary services, such as pay raises and advertising. 9. Before the burst of the health crisis, 45% of consumers never considered the supply chain when making purchases. After lockdowns began, 91% of them started to do so, Martech reports. 10. A McKinsey analysis uncovered that following the shutdowns caused by the sanitary outbreak, 93% of supply chain executives started looking for alternatives to improve supply chain resilience. Otherwise, the system would grind to a halt. 11. Following a March 2022 wave of new infection cases in Shanghai, which led to almost a month of widespread business shutdowns and port closures, shipping giant AP Moller-Maersk announced that movement and travel restriction measures would result in a 30% decrease in trucking services. 12. Retail Next data shows that in 2021, almost 30% of global retailers reported shortages and stockouts related to the effects of the health crisis and panic buying. 13. The Ukraine crisis has added a lot of pressure on global supply chains. The Financial Times reported that since the conflict began, gas prices already surged by nearly 70% in Europe. 14. The United States is being dramatically impacted by the conflict too. Worldwide, 374,000 businesses use Russian suppliers, with 90% of them based in the U.S., according to Forbes. 15. On top of that, more than 90% of the United States semiconductor-grade neon is sourced from Ukraine. 16. On a global scale, 241,000 businesses use Ukrainian suppliers. However, over 93 of those businesses are in the United States. 17. Raw material shortages are also contributing to higher prices and rampant inflation. For example, this year, cotton futures reached a decade high with prices that are 275 times higher than they were in January of 2021, Bloomberg data shows. 18. Experts with logistics firm Supply Chain Brain reported that despite a 36% year-over-year increase in 2021, it's expected there will be another 30% increase for the trucking industry in 2022, totaling a 66% surge in trucking costs in less than 2 years. 19. Moreover, Bloomberg estimates indicate that in December 2021, ocean freight rates were more than 3 times what they were throughout 2020. 20. Since October 2021, soaring natural gas prices pushed some producers to curtail aluminum production, resulting in more than 650,000 tons of lost production capacity. 21. According to the Associated Builders and Contractors Index, construction input prices rose 22.3% this year, with non-residential construction prices jumping by 23.2%. 22. Over the past 2 years, imports from Asia to the United States increased by 40%. However, the volume of exports remained almost unchanged, Statistica reports. This means carriers have not been able to fully utilize their capacity and meet the demand for container shipping, which is why freight rates are reaching one record high after the other. 23. Big retailers like Amazon are chartering private cargo ships, making their own containers, and leasing planes to bypass supply chain disruptions like long wait times for dock space and workers. But that's a privilege millions of small business owners simply cannot afford. CNBC data shows that 89% of U.S. small businesses are susceptible to facing prolonged supply chain disruptions. 24. At the port of Long Beach, California, waiting times to discharge or pick up cargoes range from 38 to 45 days, with constraints expected to continue. Before the health crisis, waiting times averaged less than a week or 4 to 6 days. 25. While maritime shipping companies face growing challenges, businesses are trying to get their products shipped by plane. That has led air freight rates to explode 168% over the past 2 years, reports the Lodestar. 26. In 2021, 75% of shipping containers leaving the United States to go to Asia were empty. Those blank sailings occurred partly because port congestion in America was so bad that when containers were finally unloaded, shipping companies didn't wait for them to be reloaded with U.S. goods to make the return trip. Instead, they were diverted to other markets that were more profitable for cargo carriers. 27. The American Trucking Association data shows that the industry could face a shortage of over 140,000 drivers by 2026, increasing the driver shortage to over 160,000 drivers by 2030. 28. Unfilled jobs and a manufacturing skills gap are expected to cost the United States as much as $1 trillion by 2030, according to estimates from Datex. 29. To make things worse, 2.1 million jobs critical to the supply chain and manufacturing industry will remain unfilled by 2030, according to Forbes' supply chain experts. 30. Last year, Resilink reported the highest rate of manufacturing disruptions recorded in a single year. The firm sent out 1,946 supply chain disruptions alerts, marking a 129% increase compared to 2020. Most of these interruptions were caused by factory fires, which have been attributed to gaps in regulatory and process execution and a shortage of skilled labor in warehouses. Now, all of these numbers expose the unprecedented damages done to this key system for global trade. These problems cannot be fixed overnight, and more issues continue to emerge with each passing day. In other words, the global supply chain breakdown has only just begun. Even if we experience moments of relative stability, a lot more turbulence is still ahead. As this perfect storm of factors continues to intensify, 2022 is right on track to be the worst year ever for supply chains. This means we should all prepare accordingly, because at this point, it only takes one single blow to interrupt the flow of goods across the world, and a recovery may not arrive until 2024.